Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. Let's get something straight first. Everyone would watch this fight if it happened in 2021, if it happened in 2031, if it happened in 2041. Imagine, for a second, 2051, Khabib versus Conor. Both are in their 60s, settling their beef once and for all. These two first talked with their fists back in UFC 229 on October 6, 2018. Khabib is 1-0 against Conor after beating him via neck crank in the 4th round. But what happens if these two were to fight again? Does Khabib just walk through him again? Did Khabib actually walk through Conor? Before we go any further, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We do a weekly podcast and talk about breaking news in the UFC and MMA. Conor and Khabib, since they last fought, have had different paths in the MMA world. Conor took time off and eventually came back and beat Donald Cerrone, and Khabib went on to defend his title against Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and then decided to retire. The way we will look at how a rematch goes, we will take a closer look at what really went down at UFC 229. In my opinion, Conor had the most competitive bout against Khabib compared to any other opponent Khabib has ever had. Conor for one went to the 4th round and arguably won the 3rd round. This sounds like confirmation bias, but this is a very important takeaway. This reflects what the story of the fight was. In the 1st round, Khabib looked to utilize his wrestling and take Conor into his world. However, Conor was not willing to join in. He was able to react at a very low takedown attempt, targeting Conor's foot. From there, Khabib would transition to a takedown against the fence. In a position such as this, Khabib was forecasted to rain down bombs and bloody up Conor. Conor, however, did have a game plan, which assumed he was going to be taken down. Conor applied downward pressure onto Khabib's head in order to prevent Khabib from posturing up and throwing strikes from the top. Khabib would get his signature figure 4 lock, but a lot of the strikes from there were either avoided or parried away. Conor was in a danger zone but was able to take minimal damage. The real consequences of these exchanges was fatigue due to all the grappling. The 2nd round started. Conor pressed forward. This is the first time where he could really stand up and start to read Khabib's strikes and movements. Conor excels at countering his opponents with laser precision. He looked to do the same thing to Khabib. He was unable to keep Khabib in a range that he would prefer. Khabib was simply too close. Khabib would level change and throw an overhand right that would result in a flash knockdown. Less than 30 seconds later, Khabib tried to do it again, but this time Conor instead slid out of range and tried to return with a cross, but missed. He had trouble timing his counters and was unable to avoid strikes coming at him. Every time Conor would counter, he would end up missing or be crowded by Khabib's body or arms, which didn't let him fully extend his strikes. Credit to Khabib though. The reason why Conor also missed was because his back was against the cage. It limited the amount of movements Conor had. Conor is very good at matchups where he's able to take turns and he is dictating the pace. Khabib simply would not let this happen because he is aware of the abilities Conor possesses. When taken down again, Conor didn't show much urgency to stand up, but rather stay on the ground and wait for an opportunity to present itself for him to stand back up. His game plan seemed like he was going to weather the storm and avoid getting finished. He trusted in his durability. He did this by rolling with punches the best he could, or cover up when he was unable to. The 3rd round started, and both fighters were visibly tired from all the action in the first 2 rounds. Conor was reaching with his strikes. He was trying to hit Khabib, but he would escape and circle away. Conor did throw a teep kick to the stomach that landed, but didn't throw many kicks during the fight as anticipated. He did say after the fight that he did hurt his left foot during training. Against a wrestler, he threw a teep kick and broke his toes. This was 2 to 3 weeks before his highly anticipated fight against Khabib. He referred to his foot as being the size of a balloon. There is a misconception about this comment. When referring to his foot being the size of a balloon, he was referring to when it broke 2 to 3 weeks prior. The doctor realigned his toes when he broke it, which led to his foot blowing up to the size of a, you guessed it, balloon. For a southpaw fighter, to throw a teep kick, you would have to throw it from your back foot, which for Conor would be his left leg. Khabib did go for a takedown, but Conor was able to sprawl very well and transition to a clinch where he did damage with an elbow. The 4th round is where it all came to an end. Conor now had much better timing with the strikes. He was staying in his range and countering with Conor-esque movement. The problem though was he didn't have the same power or agility behind the strikes as compared to a fresher version of himself. He even started to throw teep kicks a lot more now, and it was landing. He did get one partially caught, but it still landed partially on Khabib. Khabib had enough of this fight and went for a final takedown, where Conor would give up his back for a chance to stand up again. Big mistake when dealing with Khabib, who turned it into a neck crank to finish the fight. What are the takeaways from this fight that can be better used to predict how the second fight goes? 1. Conor did get out-grappled, but rightfully so. Khabib is a world-class grappler who's one of a kind. Conor should not go in there thinking he can out-wrestle the poster boy for wrestling. What he did rather was weather the storm and take minimal damage, which he did better than most of Khabib's opponents. 2. Khabib tested his stand-up and chin against one of the best strikers in MMA today. He showed how he can crowd Conor and make him miss. This way, Conor was unable to connect with clean shots and dictate the pace. And finally, 3. Khabib's game plan just worked better than Conor's. It's that simple. Both fighters have strengths and weaknesses. It's a game of chess. Conor was just not able to capitalize on the opportunities his game plan presented, but Khabib did. This fight may have seemed one-sided, but it's far from that. Both fighters went in there and put their skills, abilities, and chins on the line. But there's only one victor. What do I think happens in the second fight? I think Conor will look to improve his ability to deal with an opponent that constantly pressures and crowds him. What does he do in those scenarios, especially after being grappled for 10 minutes? And for Khabib, he will have to do what he does best, avoid significant strikes and utilize his wrestling and sambo. I honestly think that if these fighters were to fight 100 times, I would say Khabib wins 60 times and loses 40. We've seen this fight happen, but there's so many points in the fight it could have gone either way. We don't give Conor enough credit, and we don't give Khabib enough credit as well. Both are generational athletes that will stand the test of time as being two of the greatest lightweights in MMA history.
So coming into this fight, you teased that, hey, if Conor wins, you really like the idea of a lightweight title rematch. But this week, there's been a lot of fan demand, it seems like, for him versus Masvidal. And now that you're saying, hey, you like him at 170 pounds, what do you think makes more sense? A lightweight title fight or maybe this fight with Masvidal?
Yeah, listen, every time there's somebody out there fun, there's always somebody fun that can match up with Conor, and everybody wants to fight Conor. Everybody's wanted to fight Conor for the last however many years. When you look at what makes sense, right? We're at a place right now where Conor was saying, going into the Khabib fight, he had lots of personal stuff, some stuff self-inflicted. He had injuries. He had all these things going on. And he has been obsessed with getting that rematch because he knows that he wasn't, 100% right. And when you look at this for Khabib is 28-0. He's undefeated, right? You start talking about this kid's legacy. First of all, to go 28-0 in this sport is, I don't care who you fought, it's tough to do, right? Well, this guy's a world champion. And after tonight, and with how Khabib won the first time, and how famous Khabib has become since that first fight, we're looking at Hagler Hearns. We're looking at Ali Foreman, Ali Frazier. This is a massive fight with global appeal. It's the fight that you make. It's the fight that makes sense. It's for the 155-pound title. If Conor and Masvidal fight, neither one of them even have a title. Although Conor does want his BMF title, but he doesn't have a world championship. So Khabib's the fight to make. It's huge for Khabib's legacy too. I mean, if he beat Conor McGregor, then he beats Tony Ferguson, then he beats Conor McGregor again, and I mean, this is how this kid, when he retires, he's 30-something-0, and he's beat all the best.
Then I gave him credit for, so I've got to respect that. He's a formidable opponent, wrestles bears since he's a kid, has put a lot of time into his stand-up work, and he was a lot sharper than I anticipated it was going to be. So I've got to respect that, it was his big moment. Yeah. It's easy to do this once, okay? It's very easy for someone to be given something and to do it just one time. And it's like, you'll put your absolute all into it, but to do it time after time and year after year, that's when the motivation kind of dips, that's when the dedication kind of lacks, and that's when people creep up, and that's what I feel has happened here. You know, I didn't give him his respect, I marched forward, didn't give a shit, I got caught with that overhand. I would not get, if I switched on, I would not get caught with that overhand in any form of combat. So I'm very confident, very eager, very in shape, and let's keep it going.
He didn't want to stand with
almost dropping someone, because he almost dropped me. He didn't drop me. I got back up on my feet, threw shots, threw a knee, and then he shot. Imagine almost dropping someone with a picture-perfect shot, a picture-perfect punch, and then shooting for the legs.
That's a pussy shit.
And then you shoot for the legs, stand up. And when you beat a man convincingly, it's not really necessary to go back for a rematch, but when there's dispute, or when or if there's dispute, then there must be a rematch. There's been dispute in my last one. I slapped his brother and his cousin around on top of the cage. He tried to jump out of the This is not over, so there's dispute. There's got to be a rematch.
If you like the video, make sure to press a thumbs up. And if you want more, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this and our podcast talking about the latest news and events in UFC and MMA. Do you think this fight ever happens? When and how? Who do you think wins? Tell us in the comments below and let's start a discussion.